Man, it's hard. It's really hard. I asked my wife, I said, why me? You know, we left Keachau when I was 10. Why me? Why did Aunt Rena pick me? She said, well, you're the only one that no matter what anybody said about him, you still looked up to him. And I did. I grew up. We moved when I was 10 years old, and from the time I was a little bitty kid, Rich always looked out for me. I spent a lot of time in the washroom in Uncle Dick's refrigerator. And Dad'd catch me and they'd say, "Oh, George, you'll be all right." And right up until fast forward to 2008, I was working for Bill Richardson. Rich was living in Montana, and we was going up there once a month to horse sale. We, him and Frog, we went out to a little bar, and I got in a little bit more trouble than what I could handle, and he's right there with me, looking out for me. I'll never forget it. We come back from that trip. I had on a load of horses. Jim Babcock sent a load of horses up there with, or some horses up there with us. Carol Rose sent some horses up there with us. We had some horses that were worth a lot of money on there, and we was coming back, and Rich and Frog had decided they was going to move back down to this area, so they came back at the same time I did. We ran back from Billings. Well, I guess they stopped off at Berry's and I went on, but they left a little bit ahead of me, and I caught up with them. We stopped up there in Nebraska and got fuel and headed south down through the country where I could run around the scales, and I noticed something. What are you doing?
I'm fixing it. Go ahead.
And I noticed a commotion, and I called him. I said, "Rich, we got to pull over. There's something going on back there. I need to check it out." So we whooped off into some business's driveway, and they jumped out and ran up their back trailer, and I looked, and there was one of them down. Did you lose me?
You're back.
You're back.
You're back.
But anyway, I looked and seen one of them was down. It was one of Carol Rose's mares. She had missed on her because she wanted way too much for her, but she's a nice mare. And so I just grabbed, I was in that semi, I just grabbed the back gate, and I hollered Frog. I said, "Hold the gate," and I bailed over the top of them, jumped in there, and went to trying to get her up. And I looked, and Rich was right in there with me. And long story short, we got her up. She was in pretty bad shape. They'd stomped her pretty bad. We went to climbing out of the back of the truck, and Frog was just standing there shaking her head. She said, "You're the only two in the world that would have done that." And that brings me to why I believe Aunt Rena asked me to do this, because we were a lot alike. A lot of bad and some good. But he was my hero. I looked up to him through most of my life. And I tried to pattern myself after him. Like I said, a lot of good and a lot of bad, but
That might not have been a good idea.
that might not have been a good idea. But, I was hauling cattle. After they moved back to Kansas, I was hauling cattle, and I was up late nights, and a lot of times he was up late night too, so he'd call me, and we spent a lot of nights, me running out across Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle, talking on the phone about things that I never would have thought I'd be talking to Richie about. I learned, one of the things he told me, he said, everybody wants to be an outlaw, except for the outlaws. He said, sometimes we just want to be normal. There's a lot to that. There's a lot to it. Him and Kat got together. He moved to Texas, and he called me one day. He's excited, just like a little kid. He called me. He said, "I'm getting a fishing license." I said, "Do what?" He said, "I'm getting a fishing license." I said, "What are you telling me for?" He said, "Well, I ain't had a driver's license since I was 18. I figured this is a pretty big step." You're probably right. Anyway, Aunt Rena said she wanted to give everybody a chance to tell a story about Rich, because Lord, there was a lot of them. Oh, Ducky's got a microphone she'll pass around.
Kind of like his dad. Some of them aren't repeatable.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and throw a disclaimer out. Some of the names need to be changed for the innocent that are present. But one thing that stood out to me is we was at Shawnee and me and Dad was up there and we was walking down the alley and there was Uncle Dick and Rich standing in the alley and Rich was on a horse and we just stand there talking and Rich had a bottle of whiskey in one hand and the reins and a cigarette in the other hand. And what happened, I don't know. This horse went bucking down the alley, plumb to the wall, spurred him. He come bucking back down the alley, and as he was coming back down the alley, he reached, took a drink of whiskey. And I thought, I'm going to be like that. Not so much the whiskey, but boy, could he ride a bronc. I mean, a bad dude. And just make it look like it was nothing. So that's my story that I've got to tell. Anybody got anything? Ducky's got a cordless mic. She'll hand it around. Don't everybody jump up at once, like I said. Bronchodonk.
I got something to say. I feel like Matt and I always want to be like Richie. 'Cause he was tough, you know what I mean? You're right about that, man.
He was a cowboy.
He's a damn right, he's a cowboy. We was up at the barn one day and he was riding one horse here and another beside him. He was riding one bucking horse and jump off and get on the other at the same time. I thought that was pretty special, buddy. You know what I'm saying? I miss him. Me and Richie and Barry and David used to go fishing down on the creek when they come spend the summers with us. And we were riding horses over here in this creek. We weren't allowed to get our saddles wet, but it didn't matter to Richie. Richie just jumped right in the saddle and all. Oh, boy,
He would get your saddle wet if you didn't watch
that's
it.
what I had to say. I miss him. That what you guys think you want to say?
Yeah, I just remember when we'd show up at a sale and we'd have our little ragtag bunch of horses that we'd show up with and we'd be cleaning them and everything. And when the Coles showed up, out of the back of their trailer come the good ones. That's what I remember. And I remember that Richie was riding them and what a good hand he was.
Yeah, you betcha.
And I remember that thinking if I could just ride one like that, you know, that's what I remember. And he will be missed.
Yeah.
He was a natural.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, you know, Dad used to say all the time, he said, Rich can't hold a candle to Uncle Dick. I never seen Uncle Dick on a horse much, but if he's better at riding a bronc than Rich,
He was,
good.
I'd love to seen it. Like
But
I
he
said.
was pretty wild himself. And he got boogered up a lot. But he was.
This ain't
Your
about
dad
Rich.
was right.
It's more about Aunt Rena. But we was cleaning horses in the alleyway up here at Keachide. I don't remember what happened. I was, like I said, I spent a lot of time in the washroom when I was a kid. And anyway, Uncle Dick hollered at me and said, Matt, go in the house in the back bathroom in the towel closet. Behind there's a bottle of whiskey. And Uncle Dick had been to rehab and he was straightened up and he got off of whiskey. Anyway, his horse pawed Rich in the head and cut his head open. Blood was everywhere and I was a nervous wreck. So I run in the house and run back here and Aunt Rena was 2 steps behind me all the way. And I went back here and grabbed that bottle of whiskey and she followed me right back out there and she said, Dick, and looked and seen Rich. The horse pawed him in the head. Rich took him a big old swig of it, and Uncle Dick poured it on his head and went to sewing him up.
Yeah.
That's the craziest. You know, and Pancho and I was talking about it a while ago. You know, I learned at a young age to suppress a lot of what I seen because who's going to believe it? This crowd of people right here is the only ones that would believe anything that happened.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we used to
happened.
go to sales and you'd talk to
to
people about it and they'd look at you like you was crazy. And they still today.
From experience, it's all the truth. No, people think you're exaggerating. People don't.